Canto Valley is a weird place. That's what people have been saying for years. And as someone that grew up here, I can easily confirm it. In fact, if anything, its strangeness has been understated. After all, the things outsiders see as weird are totally normal to us now. The bent and twisted trees that bleed red sap in the summer, or the abandoned logging camp where rusted equipment occasionally turns on when no one is around, or the large number of albino deer that live in the woods, with their motley white fur and pink eyes, and the eerie noises they make when they're startled, sounding like a toddler throwing a tantrum or a woman being murdered. But all of that is just background noise compared to the actual oddities of our town. There's the retaining wall outside of the Pattersons' orange grove that birds of all types keep hurtling themselves at, and the basement door you can sometimes find in the school, and the rabid bear that everyone knows is not really a bear. But I always have to mention the jawstones. At least, that's what my brother and I call them. Elise calls them the trapstones, and I've heard my father and other adults call them the closing stones. But Mr. Knoll calls them the jawstones. Hidden amongst the woods in the valley are dozens, if not hundreds, of small caves and crevices in the exposed rock, poking out from the brush and grass, hidden between tree roots and weeds. Some are tall enough to walk through. Others are so short that they can only be traversed while lying flat on your stomach. But what they all have in common is that sometimes their entrances close, and other times they reopen. When shut, you could never know that a cave had been there, the mouth being closed with smooth, unbroken stone. And when opened, the edges of the breach appear naturally worn, as though formed over years or millennia. For a long time, most of what I knew about the jawstones came from what others told me. The older kids and adults spoke of it like a common occurrence. My old teacher, Mr. Knoll, spun the tale into a wilder adventure, though. He described the jawstones as a living part of the valley, watchful, patient, and hungry. He spoke of how, when young children or wayward teens went into the caves or squeezed into the crevices, the valley would feel it and would close its stony jaws behind them in hopes of swallowing them whole. Or perhaps it would crave a more immediate dinner and lock its jaws quickly on any exposed limbs some poor fool left lingering in its mouth. When Mr. Knoll would say this, he would always wave the stump of his left arm dramatically, and some of the kids would gasp, though I'm pretty sure he lost his arm in Vietnam. So while I might have been uncertain of Mr. Knoll's stories, I never doubted the existence of the jawstones. After all, I had come across plenty of caves as I explored the woods with my brother and our friends, and we all had seen those same caves sealed shut one day, as though they had never existed, yet opened the next. But I remember the first time I saw the jawstones move. My brother and I had been following an animal path along with Ethan chasing after one of Ethan's tall tales about the derelict campground, when all three of us heard a clicking noise. In those woods, unusual sounds had to be taken seriously, even at our young age. Ethan said it sounded like a stone being dropped onto another, though he spoke with uncertainty, unlike his normal confidence. I countered, pointing out the hushed tones of the noise. My brother said it sounded more like two uneven stones being rubbed against each other. Then we looked at one another with mutual understanding, and all took off in the direction of the nearest cave. As we thought, the entrance of the cave had been sealed off, closed with stones so smoothly pressed together that we would not have found it had we not already known its location. We sat down a few feet from the former cave and watched in awe as the stone began to crack and splinter and retract in an unnatural, nearly organic way, and whispered about how exciting it would be to explore it immediately after it had been reopened. No pebbles or chunks of rock fell to the ground. It all merely withdrew into the stones on the side, like small dewdrops being smoothly consumed into a large bead of water, and those beads flowing into a pool of water. I might have enjoyed the first time I saw the jawstones open, had it not been for the distressed sounds coming from behind the rock. We all heard it at the same time, and we all panicked at the same time as well. It might have been muted due to the stone between us, but its source became instantly obvious. It sounded like a screaming child. A child had somehow gotten caught in the cave when the jawstones shut. Everything Mr. Knoll had warned us of came crashing back in that moment. Ethan began loudly asking if we should go for help. My brother held his shoulder to keep him from running, saying that we needed to stick together in the woods. I ran up to the slowly opening stone wall and began pounding on it with a fist, shouting that we could hear them and they would be all right. The screaming grew louder and more urgent. My brother rushed to my side, and both of us tried in vain to pull at the stone where it had split to open it wider, but it did not budge any faster than it had already been moving. As the fissure to the cave opened wider, we heard the screaming child more clearly, and my brother and I turned to look at one another at the same moment. In our panic, we had forgotten an important question. How had a child made it that far into the forest alone? A head burst out from the opening, all white and red and long and screaming. I fell back on my rear with a shout, and my brother landed on his back opposite of me. The head that had emerged from the cave opening was that of an albino deer, screaming like a toddler. Its patchy white fur had been matted with blood from where it had scraped itself against the stone. Its short horns, that of a doe, had been chipped, cracked, and broken, and its eyes had gone from pink to red with an overwhelming madness. It continued to scrape its flanks on the stone, opening fresh wounds and painting it with blood, as foam and spittle frothed at its mouth. When the jawstones had opened wide enough, it dashed out from the cave, fumbling away from the trail and entering deeper into the woods, its screams in the distance and dried blood on the rocks all that had been left of it. I don't remember which of us spoke first, but Ethan wisely suggested, in the most casual tone he could muster, that we did not need to explore that cave today, since we had seen it numerous times before. We agreed, and brushing off the dirt from our clothes, we decided to make our way home and away from the woods. It would be another year before I would see the Jawstones moving once again. Only this time, I watched them close shut behind me and Elise, trapping us in the dark, illuminated only by a small flashlight for hours on end. I had trouble with tight spaces for a month after that. I wouldn't call it claustrophobia though, because for a while, every time I walked into an enclosed space, I thought I could hear a child screaming on the other side of the wall.